It's the summer of 2022 and most of the Eastern Hemisphere is boiling. Europe, North Africa, West Asia and Asia continents are soaring with record temperature rise and massive forest fires to top this crisis. Europe is the worst hit region. Wildfires are raging across tinder-dry forests in Portugal, Spain, France and Croatia. Burning homes are threatening livelihoods. The heat wave has pushed temperatures into the mid-40 degrees range in some parts. The United Kingdom has now issued its first ever red warning for exceptional heat. Let's tell you what's happening in Spain. These are the worst affected regions. Wildfires that started just 2 days ago have burnt more than 4,000 hectares as of now. 49 children had to be evacuated from a summer camp. Spain's Met Agency has forecast temperatures of more than 44 degrees Celsius. Emergency situations are increasing across the Spanish capital. The emergency calls due to heat-related problems are growing. Dozens of healthcare workers are responding to thousands of emergency calls every day. Some can be solved by a phone call, but many others require emergency services. The heat wave has left few Spanish regions on a red alert for extreme heat. Several cities in the south exceeded 40 degrees, and the current heat wave could last until Monday next week. This is the situation in Portugal, more or less the same as Spain. Residents have captured flames burning within the sight of their neighborhoods. The footage from Palmela in the Lisboa region shows smoke clouds billowing around homes and obscuring the sun. In Portugal's central area district, tired firefighters are battling to control blazes that have been fanned by strong winds. Nearly all of the drought-hit Portugal was on red alert for extreme heat conditions. Now let's move on to France. Some 1,000 firefighters with 10 water-dumping planes have been deployed to contain 2 wildfires in the Bordeaux region in southwest France. More than 10,000 people have been evacuated and some 7,000 hectares have been ravaged. Crews are working through the night to try and gain the upper hand on the blazes. No victims have been reported so far, though some homes and cars have been damaged, along with broad swathes of pine forests and grassland. Meanwhile, Belgium marked the first anniversary of the devastating floods that killed 39 people in the country. Record rainfall led to devastating floods in Belgium, Germany and the Netherlands last July, killing a total of more than 200 people and causing billions of euros in damage. While paying a tribute to the victims and families, the Prime Minister vowed to tackle climate change.
A year ago, we promised ourselves that we would transform the destructive rage of nature into an exceptional force for action. We promised that we would no longer just wait for the next floods, the next heat wave, the next extreme drought, which would kill people again. We have kept that promise to act in part by playing more than our role at the COP26 in Glasgow, placing the defense of the planet at the heart of our country's security strategy. We can and we must go further.
En plaçant la défense du climat au cœur de la stratégie de sécurité de notre pays.
There are deaths almost on a daily basis worldwide, and it is clear these erratic weather patterns are a consequence of the climate crisis. And I think it's time we paid a bit more attention to those victims. And I think it would be a good idea to have at least one day in the year in Europe where we commemorate the victims of these horrible weather patterns caused by the climate crisis.
Lluís Torrent, international consultant on climate change from Barcelona, is now joining us live on WION's Climate Tracker. Lluís, thanks so much for joining us again. Now, unprecedented heatwave temperatures we've not seen before taking place across Europe. Let's talk about Spain in particular. We've heard of the wildfires. We've been reporting about them. What's the situation on ground? And if this isn't a wake-up call when it comes to climate change, what is?
Hello, thanks for having me. Yeah, it is indeed a wake-up call. The temperatures that we're achieving today in Spain are easy to tell. All provinces are expected to reach maximum levels of 30 at least, and most of them above 35, including some regions reaching at least 44 degrees. This is not unprecedented, but what it is quite unprecedented is the level of risk of wildfire, which is almost absolutely red the whole peninsula. The region where I live, which is Catalonia, is the wholly flagged in red color, something that didn't happen in the last 40 years. So there are 3 active wildfires at the moment. The most concerning one happening in Cáceres, Salamanca, which is now reaching at least 6,000 hectares. And to put you that figure in perspective, it's 60% the surface of the city of Barcelona.
Right. Interestingly, this time that all this is happening, the heat wave, there are red alerts in different parts of Europe currently in place. This is also clashing with the tourist season. Summer is generally the time when Europe sees a flood of tourists coming in. How is all this affecting the same?
Well, usually wildfires happen in the hinterland, these fires usually don't affect coastal areas because they're not so forested. So usually, if you check on the map, the tourist areas are not the ones mostly affected. But indeed, it's a concern because in the past, wildfires, even in summer, affected coastal areas. So, when planning activities for summer activities, these things are well considered in the short term, but also in the longer term, because wildfires are expected to increase not in number, but in magnitude. So the scientists call, and the firemen, research groups from firemen units call the super wildfires, which are expected to happen more and more in not only in Spain, but also in Europe.
Right. What can you tell us about the containment efforts on ground as of now?
Well, there is this wildfire happening in Cáceres, as I mentioned earlier. Is a fire that was partly extinguished, but it reactivated just yesterday. It's 55 kilometers long, and it's not under control yet. There are other wildfires, but those are semi-controlled. There's no external assistance required at the moment because a Spanish assistance is being delivered to Portugal, which also suffering the struggle of wildfire. But at the moment, Spain has raised the alarm to level 2 out of 3. 3 is national emergency, is when external assistance is almost mandatory. Now we are on level 2.
Right, absolutely. In your expertise, I have to ask this question. We've seen climate agenda dominate most conferences of late. In your opinion, is Europe doing enough to tackle climate change?
Europe is on track to comply with the pledges that they have for 2030, but is not on track to comply with the pledges that they have for 2050. So it's clearly not enough what Europe is doing. There are a lot of challenges, and what is Europe suffering lately is these extreme events that were unprecedented in the past. So I believe that this, combined with the energy crisis that we're suffering as a continent, will be the final wake-up call for the politicians to allocate enough resources at local, regional, and national, and even a continental level to make it happen.
Right, Louis, thank you so much for all your inputs. Thanks for joining us on WION World is One at this hour.
Thank you very much.
WION World is One is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.